Hello again. We are Tom
and Eileen,
and we are librarians at the Broward County Library.
In our first program, we introduced you to art as a method to practice mindfulness. We went over some basics of mindfulness and the benefits of reducing stress, and some basic color techniques like creating a color chart and working with line and pressure to create form and tone in your drawing. These are very useful to make your adult coloring more enjoyable when working with your preferred coloring books.
Instruction on more advanced coloring and drawing techniques can be found in abundance in many different books and online resources available from Broward County Libraries, including the Universal Class Database, as we saw in the first video, so we won't go over them here. We are not just talking about art, but mindfulness and art. And we would like to talk to you today about an aspect of art that is frequently talked about, but not in the context of mindfulness, namely materials. When we were younger, we colored with wax crayons and just blocked out colors on the paper, filling in the outlines on the page, and the only rule was don't color outside the lines. But aside from which color to use, we didn't have much ability to create something because of the limitations of the materials we used and how we used them. If you have been practicing with your colored pencils, you may have already noticed that pencils have much greater flexibility than crayons, in that they can create different tones just by changing the amount of pressure you use to make your lines on the paper. But there is much more to colored pencils than that.
Part of being in a mindful state is to be aware of physical sensations and emotional balance. Frustration can easily upset your balance, and getting unpredictable or unsatisfactory results can be enough to not only spoil the enjoyment of doing art, but cause even more stress than you had before. Not being able to draw as well as you would like is always an issue, but improvement comes with experience. However, losing interest in art because your materials don't give you the results you want is easily avoidable with a bit of research and a bit of patience and a bit of practice.
The key is to understand what your materials are, what they can and can't do, and how to use them correctly. Combining mindfulness and art is much easier when you are not fighting your materials. Artist-grade materials are expensive relative to the more basic student grade, and research within your price range can help you make an informed decision on which is right for you. In this series of 3 videos, the examples shown here were done using different brands of artist-grade colored pencils. There are many options from which to choose among both student and artist-grade colored pencils, the choice of which depends not only on cost, but also on the art project and what works best for the artist to get the desired results for that project. While doing your mindfulness exercise with basic coloring, you may have noticed that your pencils don't always behave the way you would expect. If you have ever painted anything while doing home repair, for instance, you will have noticed 2 things. First, mixing and matching colors can be difficult. And second, paints from different mediums, such as acrylic and oil, do not necessarily mix well, if at all. And it's the same with colored pencils. Colored pencils come in different base materials and pigments that may or may not behave the way you think they should. Like paints, all colored pencils use a pigment of some kind which is the primary ingredient in making the color, but in order for the pigment to be made into a firm pencil core, which is usually called a lead in regular pencils, referring to the time when pencils were actually made from a lead alloy instead of the graphite used in more modern pencils, this core must have materials to make the pigment stick together and then leave a mark on the paper. These materials have different names and functions like bases and binders and are made of different chemicals, but they are similar to paints in that they stick the pigment together and give it different qualities when drawing. And these same materials determine how your pencil will behave and what results you will get when you use them. Colored pencils may or may not blend together when you color one over the other. Some pencils leave a more translucent mark which may allow you to see another color underneath and so create a sense of blending or mixing, but not in the same way that paints will. Pencil marks on paper can also be changed with a technique called burnishing, in which you take another neutral color and rub the marks together, creating a more uniform color and perhaps even blending some together. Some pencil manufacturers also make colorless blenders, which are really only a burnishing pencil, but instead of pigment in the core, there's a chemical that softens the binders in the pigmented markings and allows these colors to mix. But results using these blenders can be very uneven, so it's always important to experiment with your materials before you commit to beginning an important drawing. Use the basic techniques you've learned so far.
Make a color chart and try out different colors, different pressures, different blending and burnishing techniques and instruments. And as always, be mindful of the results. This not only helps reduce stress by being mindful, it will reduce disappointment and frustration later by not getting unexpected results, which can be difficult to fix. If you haven't already noticed, colored pencils do not erase the same way regular pencils do, because of the materials they're made from. Like crayons, some pencils are wax-based and will leave a harder, less blendable color on the page than others made with oil-based cores. Oil-based and wax-based colors may not blend, and perhaps surprisingly, even pencils with the same base materials from the same manufacturer may not blend well, if at all, even with the special blending instruments. This is especially true of wax-based pencils containing higher wax content, and even with pencils of the same brand, the wax content may vary from color to color. However, depending on the type of drawing you like to do and the techniques you prefer, you may find that pencils which resist blending may be preferable. On the other hand, some pencils may give outstanding results with blending techniques, resulting in vibrant and dynamic drawings if used correctly, or smudged and muddy ones if not. Experimentation is essential, and having a variety of materials to experiment with before working on an art project can be helpful.
The increased flexibility of your materials gives you more control over the results, but it also means that you have to learn how to use your materials to get the results you want. Getting the results you want, therefore, depends on research, practice, and requires some patience. But these are also excellent mindfulness exercises. However, trying to get your materials to do things that they were never intended or designed to do is only an exercise in frustration and, unfortunately, is doomed to failure. But even failure can be a useful part of the learning process and teach something about how the materials work and what they do. For now, just work with what you have and understand that while these basic pencils may not do everything you want them to do, you are gaining valuable experience and understanding. You are learning how to interact not only with your drawing, but also with these instruments that allow you to create and focus and bring balance back to your mind.
Being mindful of what your materials do and learning what they can't do is an important step in both your art and your mindfulness exercises. Learning about the limitations of your materials with a few setbacks and disappointments can help you focus more on being mindful in balance and less on results. Again, remember, mindfulness is a state of being, not a goal. And the results you want are not found on the page, but within yourself. Think of it as focusing on the journey, not the destination.
And as for art, learning through some trial and a few errors will help you differentiate between your lack of experience drawing and your pencil's manufacturing limitations. Didn't you get the results you wanted? Was it because of something you were trying to do but didn't know how? Or was it because your pencils weren't made to do that? Understand that you're using not only pencils, but paper as well, and different kinds of paper will give very different results, even using the same set of pencils. Learn from experience and do some research. Learn what pencils and papers are good for and what kind of drawing you want to do. But don't fall into the trap that many others do. Everyone has heard the story of the golfer who buys a new set of golf clubs because the new ones will fix all of his mistakes and make him a better golfer. But everyone else on the course knows the person swinging the club is more important than the club itself. A good golf club will allow a good golfer to get better, but a good club will not improve a bad golfer, and buying an expensive set of pencils will not make you a better artist. Better materials will make it easier for you to get the results you want, but the results are still up to you. Do the research and practice, and as you practice, you will find what sort of art you want to do, and then get the materials that are best suited to the art you want to create. Open yourself up to everything, but find out what speaks to you, what gives you joy. And as you do more research and get more practice, you will find out that materials are not the only thing that affects results. Different techniques give dramatically different results as well. A bit of change in pressure, a little effort in blending with the right instrument, and being mindful of form, shape, texture, and tone, and you can see that what you do and how you do it are more important than what you're using.
Let's now look at two examples. I created this original freehand drawing of a flower called an iris. I first thought about what I wanted the iris to look like, and then I looked at my range of colors and selected the ones I wanted to use to achieve that look. I then created a color chart of those pencils, which in this case are wax-based. Notice that the color chart shows a gradation from a heavier to a lighter application of color. This lets me know how the pencil will perform with different amounts of pressure and the kind of effects it may be used for. I then wrote the color information from the label so I can find the desired pencil again when needed. I generally also make notes for myself on what colors I used where and whether I blended colors to achieve a certain effect. Both examples use the same colors, but look very different because the pencils were used differently. In one case, I applied the color heavily on a slightly coarser type of paper, blending one color into the next to achieve a gradual change in color, and then burnished it with a lighter color to further blend and lighten the colors. Then I went over with a darker blue color with a very sharp lead to fill in details. For the other drawing, I used a smoother type of paper, applied color more lightly, and created the transitions by layering various colors in succession to create a blended look. The color chart was a guide to help me decide what colors to use and how to use them. After a light uniform look was achieved, I used a darker blue color with a very sharp lead to create the details, as in the earlier drawing. Notice that the burnished drawing with the heavier application of color appears to be highly saturated, while the other drawing seems grainy. Both are good drawings, and which technique you prefer to use for a particular project is entirely up to you. But an understanding of your materials and feeling comfortable with them is essential, and both knowledge and practice is very important in achieving this understanding.
After some practice, you may find that you are gaining mastery of your materials and learning effective techniques to get better results. But you may also find that, beyond your pencils, your other most basic material, your coloring book, is becoming a limitation. What do you do when the image you are coloring is no longer satisfying, and the paper it's printed on gives you poor results? We'll talk about that next time. For more information on drawing techniques, contact your local library for books you can check out, and visit www.broward.org/library. Be sure to have a look at the Universal Class Database with instructions on drawing, painting, and other art forms and techniques.